The sunlight filtered through the clouds, creating an almost magical atmosphere around us. Mia and I stood in front of the Thompson house, a magnificent example of Gothic architecture that seemed to have been pulled from a dark fairy tale. The imposing towers rose like fingers reaching toward the sky, and the arched windows, framed by worn stones, seemed to watch us. The vegetation surrounding the house blended with shadows, giving the place an aura of mystery that intrigued me. "Wow, look at this, Alex!" Mia exclaimed, her gaze fixed on the structure. "It's like time has stopped here." "It really is amazing," I replied, turning on my camera to capture the scene. "I think we're about to capture something epic." As I adjusted the lens, I noticed Mia stepping closer. She had a special way of making things seem more vibrant. With her brown hair blowing in the wind and her eyes sparkling with curiosity, she was the perfect companion for this adventure. "Don't you think this place has a peculiar vibe?" Mia asked, looking at the trees swaying gently, as if they were whispering secrets. "A peculiar vibe? You mean dark?" I joked, filming the details of the facade. "I think that's what gives this place its charm. Come on, let's explore." Mia laughed, but there was a hint of nervousness in her voice. "Just don't tell me you're thinking of spending the night here. That would be crazy." "Well, that depends on what we find," I replied, winking at her. "Just imagine how much content this could generate. A Gothic house, mysteries, maybe even ghosts." She grimaced. "Ghosts? You know I'm terrible with these horror stories. What if there's really something here?" "Oh, you're just trying to tease me," I said, giving her a light shove. "Let's go inside. The real adventure starts now." We walked up to the front door, which creaked as it opened. The smell of mold and aged wood hit us hard. The interior of the house was as impressive as the exterior. The entrance hall featured a dark wooden floor, with a large chandelier hanging from the ceiling, now covered in dust. The walls were adorned with tapestries that seemed to tell stories from bygone eras. Mia began examining the objects around us. "Look at this," she said, pointing to an old wooden table. "It seems like no one has touched anything here in years. Do you think we can find something interesting?" I asked, filming every corner of the room. "A diary, perhaps? Some clue about what happened here?" As we explored, a strange feeling began to envelop me. It was as if the house was alive, watching our movements. Mia seemed to sense it too. I could see the hesitation in her eyes, but curiosity was guiding her. "Alex, have you noticed how everything here seems out of place?" she asked, her voice now more cautious. "Out of place?" I repeated, stepping away from filming for a moment. "What do you mean?" "It's like everything was left in a hurry. Look at these books on the shelf, some seem to have been read recently, but dust is accumulating," Mia said, running her fingers over the volumes. "It's as if someone was here before us." She had a point. I looked around once more, noticing what I had previously overlooked. Things were a bit disordered, and the atmosphere was charged with an energy I couldn't explain. But at the same time, it only heightened my excitement. "Come on, let's see what else we can find," I suggested, trying to shake off the growing unease inside me. A house like this must have secrets. We continued to explore each room, each more intriguing than the last. As we walked, I found a slightly ajar door. I looked at Mia, who seemed hesitant, but her curiosity outweighed her fear. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, gently pushing the door open. The room was covered in dust and seemed forgotten by time. In the center stood an old desk with locked drawers that caught my attention. "Mia, come here. Look at this." She approached, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "What did you find?" "A desk." "Let's see if we can open these drawers," I said, trying to pull one of them. It was locked, but the thrill of being so close to something mysterious left me euphoric. "I bet there's something incredible inside." Mia looked around, clearly torn between curiosity and apprehension. "Alex, maybe we should leave this alone. What if we find something we're not supposed to?" "Oh, come on. What's life without a little excitement?" I replied with a mischievous smile. "Besides, I didn't come here just to look at the walls." With that, I began to rummage through the desk. Each object I found spurred my adrenaline. And then, suddenly, something caught my eye. A small notebook that seemed to have fallen from one of the shelves. I picked it up and, upon opening it, realized it was a diary. The pages were yellowed, and the words were still legible. "Mia, look at this," I called, holding the diary with enthusiasm. "It's a diary. Let's see what it says." She came closer, her expression now a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Are you sure we should read this? What if it's dangerous?" "Dangerous? It's a diary, not a spell." "You've been watching too many horror movies," I joked, but the truth was, the adrenaline was coursing through my veins. I began to flip through the pages, and the handwriting was messy yet filled with emotion. "Some pages talk about the Thompson family," I commented as I read. "It seems they went through tough times here. Look, it mentions a tragedy that occurred in the house." Mia leaned in closer, her eyes fixed on the words. "What else does it say?" "I'm not sure. But it seems something happened to one of the daughters. She mentions a feeling that something was watching her," I said, my tone now more serious. "That's unsettling." In that moment, a chill ran down my spine, and the atmosphere around us seemed to change. The walls felt like they were closing in, and a sense of discomfort began to dominate the environment. I looked at Mia, who also appeared pale. "Let's keep going. There might be more information." As we resumed our exploration, the sunlight began to fade, and the house transformed into a maze of shadows. The sound of our voices reverberated off the walls, echoing as if the house were responding. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, and I started to hear soft whispers that seemed to come out of nowhere. "Mia, did you hear that?" I asked, stopping abruptly. "What?" "I didn't hear anything," she replied, her voice trembling. "It was like a murmur." "Something whispering," I said, trying to identify the source of the sound. "Maybe it's just the wind. Or maybe it's time for us to leave," Mia suggested, her nervous gaze now fixed on the moving shadows around us. "Calm down, just a little longer. I need to understand this," I insisted, already imagining how this experience would become the centerpiece of my next project. That night, as we reviewed the footage we had taken, the whispers began to intensify. What had once been indistinct murmurs now seemed to form words. I tried to ignore them, convincing myself they were just the sounds of the house, but Mia was visibly scared. "Alex, this is getting too weird," she said, looking at me with wide eyes. "I can't stay here." "Wait, listen. Didn't you hear that? They're speaking," I replied, trying to capture the moment on my camera. "This is incredible. We need to film more." "No, Alex, this isn't incredible. This is terrifying," she shot back, her voice now a whisper. "We need to get out of here." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to press on, to continue the research and capture whatever was happening, but Mia's expression made me reconsider. The tension was palpable, and this house, with its secrets and untold stories, was beginning to feel like a place I could no longer control. "Let's take a walk and then head home," I suggested, trying to calm her. "Just a little longer, ####, look at these walls," Mia replied, her eyes shining with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "It's as if they hold stories just waiting to be told." I laughed, trying to ease the tension. Or maybe stories that should remain buried. But deep down, I knew the mystery was drawing me in like a moth to a flame. We decided to explore the rooms. Each door we opened revealed a new aspect of the house, as if we were navigating a labyrinth of secrets. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of aged wood, making me feel as though time had come to a standstill. "Look at this!" Mia exclaimed, crouching down beside a dusty drawer. "What do you think is inside?" Camera in hand, I recorded as she slowly opened the drawer. Inside, there was an old diary, its pages yellowed and worn. "It seems like someone really cared about this," I said, leaning in to see better. Mia picked it up delicately, as if fearing it would crumble in her hands. "Should we read it?" she asked hesitantly. "I don't know. It might be invasive," I replied, although curiosity was consuming me. But the idea of filming the discovery was irresistible. "Let's record first, then we'll decide." With the camera rolling, Mia began to flip through the pages. "It looks like it belongs to the youngest daughter of the Thompson family," she remarked, reading aloud. "She talks about her dreams and hopes, but there's something here that makes me uneasy. She mentions a feeling of oppression in the house. That's probably just her imagination, right?" I asked, trying to calm her. But as she read on, I felt a chill run down my spine. When night fell, we decided to watch the footage we had recorded during the day. We sat on the sofa, surrounded by dancing shadows that seemed to move with the dim light of the television. The atmosphere was heavy, and the tension hung in the air, almost palpable. "Let's take a look," I said, hitting play. The images began to play, and I lost myself in the beauty of the footage, but I was soon interrupted by a low, indistinct whisper that started to echo through the room. "Mia, did you hear that?" I asked, turning my gaze from the screen to meet hers. "What was it?" "What did you hear?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It sounds like someone is talking." My heart began to race. "I think it's just the sound of the house, right? Don't worry." But as the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, clearer. They seemed to form incomprehensible words, as if the house was trying to communicate with us. "Mia, I can't understand. Are you okay?" I asked, noticing that she was visibly shaken. "Alex, this is really strange. Why are we here?" "We should leave," she said, almost pleading. "Calm down, let's just ignore it. It's just an old house, full of stories," I tried to convince her, but my own voice sounded uncertain. The night dragged on, and the whispers did not cease. I tried to focus on the screen, but the feeling of being watched became unbearable. In the back of my mind, a small voice whispered that perhaps we were digging into something we shouldn't. The next morning, I decided that I needed to learn more about the house. What had happened there? What did the whispers want to tell us? After a quick coffee, I suggested to Mia that we head into the neighborhood to ask someone if they knew the history of the place. "Alex, are you sure this is a good idea?" she questioned, somewhat reluctant. But I could see curiosity glimmering in her eyes, even if she tried to hide it. "Of course. Let's talk to someone who can help us," I replied, trying to convey confidence. "Who better than a neighbor who has lived here for so long?" We left and walked to the house next door, where an elderly man with graying hair was tending to his garden. I adjusted the camera, ready to capture the conversation. "Good morning, sir." I greeted him. "We're exploring the Thompson house and would love to know if you could tell us a bit about its history." The man paused and looked at us with an expression that mixed curiosity and concern. "Ah, the Thompsons, a strange family, weren't they? This house has a restless soul," he said, in a serious tone. "What do you mean by that?" Mia asked, leaning forward. "A brutal crime happened here many years ago. I don't like to talk about it, people tend to get uneasy," he said, looking down as if reluctant to share. "But what happened? Why is the house like this?" I pressed, feeling adrenaline surge. "Once, the whole family just disappeared. No one knows what happened. Some people believe they made a pact with something that's still here," Mr. Thompson replied, his gaze distant. Mia and I exchanged glances, and a chill ran down my spine. A pact? What kind of pact? I asked, trying to absorb every word. I don't know. Just that the house attracts those who have something to pay, something to lose. If you're here, maybe you're already caught in the cycle, he murmured, as if trying to convince himself he wasn't being serious. Mia seemed increasingly unsettled. Alex, let's go. I don't like this conversation, she said, her voice shaking. But we need to know more. I protested, but her expression made me hesitate. Okay, let's go back and do some more research, but that only makes us more intrigued. We returned to the house, and a new determination took hold of me. We needed to understand the story behind the whispers, behind the diary we had found. Let's go to the local library, I suggested to Mia. We might find more information about the Thompson family and what happened to them. She agreed, but I could see that concern still lingered in her eyes. I was so eager to uncover the secrets the house held that I didn't realize how disturbed she was. Upon arriving at the library, the smell of old paper and the reverent silence enveloped us. We began to scour the archives, and soon we found newspaper clippings that spoke of the family's disappearance. The photos showed a happy family, but there was something dark in their faces that I couldn't ignore. Mia, look at this. I said, showing her a picture of a girl with a charming smile, but her eyes reflected a sadness that was almost palpable. It's chilling, Mia whispered, gazing at the image. What happened to them? At that moment, a library staff member approached us. Are you interested in the Thompson family? She asked, with a curious look. Yes, we're trying to find out what happened, I replied, trying to sound confident. She nodded, as if she had been expecting this question. If you'd like, I can show you a diary that belonged to one of the daughters. It's filled with information about the family and some strange things that happened in the house. Mia and I exchanged glances, and excitement began to take hold of me. Yes, please. That would be amazing, I said. The staff member led us to a reserved room, where the diary was kept. The smell of aged paper filled our senses as she placed it on the table. Here it is. Be careful, it's quite fragile, she warned as she handed it to us. Mia took the diary gently. Let's see what she wrote, she suggested, opening the cover. The pages were filled with notes. I pointed out the words that caught my attention. It says here that she made a pact with an entity. What do you think that means? I asked, curiosity consuming me. The local library was a place that had always fascinated me. When Alex and I entered, the tall, dusty shelves enveloped me in a mix of curiosity and slight discomfort. The smell of old books, combined with the soft sound of paper being turned, created an almost magical atmosphere. Alex was so excited that he could hardly stop talking about the research we were about to do. Look, Mia. Here are a bunch of old newspaper clippings. Let's see if we find anything about the Thompson family. He was so pumped that he could barely stand still. I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm, but a part of me felt increasingly uneasy. Be careful, Alex. Remember what Mr. Thompson said. The house has a dark history, I reminded him, trying to temper his excitement. I know. But that just makes it all the more interesting. He exclaimed, pulling several clippings from the shelf. With each new document he examined, I felt the tension growing between us. It was as if the house was watching us, waiting. I stopped in front of a table where a library staff member was organizing some books. Excuse me, do you know anything about the Thompson family? I asked, a bit nervously. She looked up and smiled. Ah, the Thompsons, ###, a beloved family in the town. But as you may know, strange things happened there. Strange? Alex turned quickly, his eyes shining with curiosity. Yes, there was a disappearance. No one knows for sure what happened. The house remained empty for many years, she explained, with a distant look. They say the family's soul is still connected to it, but that's just a legend. Do you have any clippings you could show us? I asked, feeling my heart race. The idea of uncovering more about the history of the house and the Thompson family intrigued me, but at the same time, it unsettled me. The employee nodded and began searching through a drawer. Here, I found some old clippings. She handed us a few yellowed papers, and I soon realized they were news articles about the family's disappearance. The images showed a happy family, but there was something in their faces, a shadowed gaze that seemed to suggest a deep secret. Look at this, Mia. They seemed so normal, Alex said, running his fingers over the photos. But how could a family like that just vanish without a trace? Maybe they weren't so normal after all, I murmured, studying the faces in the photos. There's something wrong here. We continued exploring the library, and in a shelf near the back, we found an old diary. Look, a diary! Alex exclaimed, holding the object carefully. It could belong to one of the daughters in the family. I moved closer, and together we began to flip through the pages. The diary was filled with notes and childish drawings. On one page, a phrase caught my attention: "We made a pact with the shadow." A pact? I repeated, a chill running up my spine. What does that mean? I don't know, but it seems the house is connected to something much deeper than we imagined, Alex said, his voice full of excitement, but I could sense a growing tension in his tone. We need to take this home and analyze it further. It might be the key to understanding everything, I suggested, but a part of me hesitated. What more could we discover? I was already feeling the house's presence, and the diary seemed to be a doorway to something better left closed. We returned home, and the silence in the car was heavy. With each passing second, the whispers in my mind seemed to take shape. When we arrived, the atmosphere felt different. It was as if the house was waiting for us, eager to reveal its secrets. Let's watch the footage we recorded, Alex suggested, turning on the computer. I sat beside him, anxiety growing with each second the videos rolled. The images of the house, captured in daylight, seemed even darker now. Look, this is the moment we found the diary, he commented, pointing at the screen. But as we watched, a whisper began to echo, soft at first, but soon transforming into something more intense. Mia, the voice seemed to call my name. I glanced at Alex, who was so absorbed in the screen that he didn't seem to notice. Alex, did you hear that? I asked, my voice trembling. Huh? What? He replied, distracted. The voice, it said my name, I said, feeling a shiver run down my body. It's happening again. He looked at me, finally realizing the terror in my expression. You must be imagining things. It's just the sound of the house, he tried to comfort me, but I knew it was more than that. Let's keep watching. Maybe we'll find something important. As the whispers grew louder, I could no longer contain my fear. Alex, we can't ignore this. I feel like we're attracting something dangerous. I nearly shouted, but he merely frowned, determined to continue. The night wore on, and the whispers seemed to intensify with each moment. I felt like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. Alex, I don't want to stay here anymore. Let's go. I pleaded, but he was so focused on the screen that he didn't seem to hear. When he finally turned off the computer, the room was enveloped in an oppressive silence. Maybe we should sleep and think about all this tomorrow, he suggested, but I couldn't relax. I can't sleep here. Something isn't right, I said, my voice almost a whisper. It'll be fine, I promise. Tomorrow, we'll go back to the library and find out everything we can about the family. I feel like we're on the brink of something big, he replied, but I could only shake my head, a knot forming in my stomach. Please, Alex. Let's just step outside for a moment. I need fresh air, I begged, and finally, he agreed. We stepped out together, the night's chill wrapping around us like a cloak. As we walked through the garden, I felt the pressure on me increase. The house seemed to be watching, as if waiting for us to return. "Look, Mia, the house is just a structure. It can't harm us," Alex said, trying to comfort me. "You don't understand. It's as if the house is alive, like it has a soul," I responded, frustrated. "Can't you feel it?" He fell silent for a moment, but soon his expression lit up again. "Let's go back and see what else we can discover. The truth is in there." We returned, and as soon as we entered, the feeling of oppression surged. I could sense the whispers growing louder, closer. Alex seemed determined to unravel the mystery, but with every step we took, I felt we were getting closer to something much darker than we could imagine. With each moment, the presence of the house became more palpable. I was restless, but I knew Alex was too captivated by our discovery to recognize the growing danger. He was obsessed, and I didn't know how to bring him back to reality. "Let's just take another look at the diary. Maybe there's something we missed," he suggested, his voice heavy with determination. I hesitated, but fear turned into an impulse. We needed to understand what was really happening. When I opened the diary again, the childish drawings seemed more vivid. The strokes of a child, filled with emotion, unsettled me. Part of me wanted to believe this was just a story, but the other part knew there was something very real and frightening behind it. "Look, Alex, here it mentions the shadow. And it talks about a pact," I said, pointing to a passage. "What do you think that means?" "I don't know, but it seems the child was referring to something the family did. Something that trapped them here," he replied, his eyes shining brighter with every word. "What if that's true? What if the pact is still active?" I asked, panic flooding over me. "We need to find out what happened to the family. This could be the key to unraveling the mysteries of the house," he insisted. But I knew we were diving into an abyss from which we might not return. As the atmosphere in the house grew more oppressive, we decided we needed to confront the presence of the house. But I wasn't ready for what was to come. Night fell over the Thompson house, and darkness spread like a heavy cloak, enveloping every corner of the Gothic structure. I sat at the table in the living room, surrounded by papers and notes, while the dim glow of my laptop screen illuminated my face. The sound of the wind whistled through the cracks, and it was hard not to feel that the house itself was alive, watching me with invisible eyes. My mind was in turmoil, filled with thoughts about the history I was uncovering. "Mia, are you okay?" I asked, turning to her, as she leaned against the door with a worried expression. She seemed distant, lost in her own thoughts, which was rare for her. "I don't know, Alex," she replied, shaking her head. "This place. It's making me uneasy. I can't stop thinking about those stories we heard from Mr. Thompson." "I get it, but this is fascinating. Look, we have the chance to find out what really happened here," I said, trying to cheer her up. "Check out what I found." I showed her a newspaper clipping that talked about the disappearance of the Thompson family. She came closer, but the concern in her eyes didn't fade. "Do you really think we should continue with this? What if the story is darker than we're imagining?" Her words echoed in my mind, but excitement overtook me. "We need to understand. We can't just ignore this. What happened here, Mia, might be linked to the whispers we heard. I feel like we're close to something big." Mia sighed, and I could see the internal struggle in her face. "I just don't want it to affect us, Alex. I don't want you to become obsessed with this. You have to understand that these things can have consequences." "You're being dramatic," I retorted, trying to lighten the tension. ###, but deep down, I knew there was something deeper, a connection I couldn't explain. The whispers echoing off the walls seemed to call out to me, and I wasn't willing to ignore them. The night wore on, and I was completely immersed in my research. Notes, videos, newspaper clippings, everything piled up into a mountain of information. The diary we found in the drawer intrigued me in particular. The words of the Thompsons' daughter resonated within me, as if I were being pulled into her story. I needed to know more. After hours of digging, I decided it was time to rest. I glanced at Mia, who had fallen asleep on the couch, the expression of concern still present on her serene face. I stood up gently, trying not to wake her, and made my way to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I drank, I heard a whisper. It was so faint that I thought I had imagined it. But as I approached the living room, the whisper intensified, and I stopped, my heart racing. "Alex," the call was almost a plea, an echo that seemed to come from within the house. I hesitated, but curiosity pulled me forward. "Alex," the whisper sounded again, clearer this time. "Mia?" I called, fearing she might wake and not hear me. But there was no reply, and the voice seemed to beckon me once more. I didn't know whether to stay or investigate. What kind of entity was trying to communicate with me? I decided to confront whatever it was. The house was enveloped in silence, except for the sound of my heartbeat. As I walked through the corridors, I noticed the air felt heavier, as if the pressure was increasing. What was happening? "I'm here," I shouted, my voice trembling. "If you wish to communicate, I'm listening." The whisper stopped. A deep silence took over, and I felt foolish for speaking. The tension was palpable, and I was about to turn back when I heard the voice again, now louder and clearer, but still shrouded in mystery. "Alex, come, who's there?" I asked, my voice sounding firmer than I felt. But in response, there was only silence. I returned to the living room, and Mia was still asleep, but her expression had changed. She looked restless, as if she were having a nightmare. Concern washed over me. I didn't want her to feel this way, and the house seemed to feed on that fear. The next morning, I woke to sunlight filtering through the windows. Mia was already up, fiddling with her phone. There was a tension between us that I couldn't explain. "Did you have nightmares?" I asked, trying to break the ice. "Yes," she replied, not looking at me. "About the house. I saw a child crying, and then everything caught fire." I swallowed hard. "That's disturbing. I also heard some things during the night. Whispers. They seemed to be calling me." She turned to me, her eyes wide and filled with worry. "Alex, this isn't normal. We need to stop this. It's not safe." "But what if this is the key to understanding what happened here?" "We have to investigate more," I said, determination growing within me. Mia crossed her arms, and I could feel her frustration. "You don't understand. These stories might be affecting us more than we think. What if those whispers are a warning? Or an invitation?" I replied, and her expression darkened. "We need more information. Let's go to the library today." She hesitated but eventually agreed. "Okay, but please, let's just look. I don't want you to become obsessed." The local library was small but had a peculiar charm. The smell of old books and polished wood filled the air, and I felt a bit calmer. We explored the shelves and soon found a section dedicated to local history. "Look at this," I said, pointing to a yellowed newspaper clipping. "It's about the Thompson family. It says they disappeared without a trace." Mia moved closer, and I could see the unease in her eyes. "Why would the family just disappear like that? What happened to them?" "I don't know, but we need to find out," I replied, absorbing every word. When the librarian approached us, she asked if we needed help. "We're looking for information about the Thompson family," Mia said. "About what happened to them?" The librarian frowned and glanced around, as if worried about who might be listening. The Thompson family was peculiar. They had a dark history. But many prefer to leave the past behind. "Why?" I pressed, unable to contain my curiosity. "Because there are rumors that the house is cursed. They say the family made a pact with an entity. Something that trapped them in a cycle of pain," she explained, and the tension in the air grew. A pact? Mia murmured, running her hands through her hair. What does that mean? It means the house might not just be holding secrets, but also souls, the librarian replied, her tone now more serious. Be careful what you seek. Some things are better left in the past. Mia and I exchanged glances, and the worry in her eyes was palpable. We need more information about this pact, I said, resolute. The librarian, sensing our determination, led us to a room filled with old diaries and records. This is the diary of one of the Thompson daughters. It might contain information about what happened. With trembling hands from anticipation, I took the diary and began to leaf through it. The pages were yellowed, and the handwriting was elegant, but there was something disturbing in the words. We made a pact, to save the family, but something went wrong. Mia, this is really frightening, she whispered, looking over my shoulder. Read this. I said, turning to the next page. The house calls us. With each new resident, it feeds on their souls. We must fulfill the agreement. Mia recoiled, her face pale. We need to get out of here, Alex. This isn't just a story. This is real. But I couldn't stop. The curiosity consumed me. We need to understand, Mia. Whatever is happening, we have to find out. We can't give up now. We had to go back to the house, and the atmosphere was heavier than before. There was a sense of urgency in the air, as if we were being watched. Alex, please don't approach the diary again, Mia pleaded, her voice laden with fear. The door to the locked room creaked as I pushed it open. The smell of mold and dust invaded my nostrils, and an apprehension settled in my chest. The beam of the flashlight illuminated the space, revealing a scene that seemed frozen in time. Personal belongings of the Thompson family were scattered everywhere, black and white photos, old toys, and furniture covered with white sheets, like ghosts of a past that refused to be forgotten. Alex, this doesn't feel right, Mia whispered behind me, her voice trembling. I could feel the tension in her body, but curiosity pulled me closer to the objects. Look at this, Mia. I replied, pointing to a framed photo on the wall. It was an image of the Thompson family on a sunny day, all smiling, but there was something unsettling in their eyes. A look that seemed to know secrets we didn't. Mia stepped closer, and I could see her pale face reflecting the flashlight's glow. They look so happy, but there's something wrong. I don't like it here. It's just an old house, Mia. Let's explore a little more, maybe we'll find something that explains the whispers. I was determined to uncover the truth, even if it meant digging up memories that should remain buried. The atmosphere was charged, and with every step we took, the sound of our footsteps echoed as if the house was trying to speak to us. The flashlight beam illuminated a photo album on a table, and I felt an almost irresistible urge to open it. Alex, don't, Mia tried to stop me, but I had already pulled the cover off the album. The pages were yellowed, and as I flipped through them, I could see the family's story unfolding before me. Look, here are more photos of them. I said, trying to mask my growing unease. The images showed the children playing in the yard, the mother preparing dinner, and the father sitting at the table. But as I progressed through the pages, a subtle change became evident. The faces that once shone with joy now bore signs of weariness. A shadow seemed to loom over the family, and I couldn't quite identify what it was. Alex, are you seeing this? Mia asked, her voice now almost a whisper. Something happened to them. Look how their expressions change. It's as if they're being consumed by something. I paused and looked at her. Do you think this could be related to what Mr. Thompson said? About the restless soul? Mia nodded, her eyes wide and terrified. ####, we need to get out of here, Alex. This is not healthy. She was starting to panic, and it bothered me more than I wanted to admit. But the adrenaline of discovery was stronger. I decided to ignore her unease and continued flipping through the album. Then, a note on one of the pages caught my attention. The handwriting was elegant, but the words were disturbing. The house chooses its residents. With each new cycle, a soul must be offered. What are you doing? I asked, not looking up, lost in my own thoughts. This is a kind of record, a diary. They were documenting everything. Alex, this isn't a diary. It's a warning. Mia insisted, now looking genuinely distressed. We shouldn't be here. I feel like the house is alive. I lifted my gaze from the album and looked at her, trying to convince her to stay. But if we can understand what happened, maybe we can prevent it from happening again. We need to know what's going on here, Mia. And what if what we find is even more terrifying? She shot back, her voice trembling. We need to be brave. I knew I was taking a risk, but something inside me was tied to this house, as if it were a magnet. I needed to uncover the truth. Mia took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Okay, but let's be quick. I don't want to be here any longer than necessary. I continued to examine the album, and on one of the pages, I found a photo that made me stop. It was an image of a girl, probably around Mia's age, with a sad look on her face. Next to it was a note: she made the pact. Now we are one. Look at this. I shouted, drawing Mia's attention. She came over and read the note. Her face paled even more. What does this mean? Mia asked, her voice a whisper. I don't know, but it seems like one of the daughters of the family made some kind of deal with the entity. I was starting to connect the dots, but fear began to creep into my heart. And this might have something to do with the whispers we've been hearing. Alex, we need to leave. Now. Mia was almost in tears, and it made me hesitate. I wanted to comfort her, but curiosity kept me rooted. Just one more second, Mia. I said as I turned the page. What I found nearly made me drop the album. There was a list of names, all crossed out, and next to each name was a date. What is this? Mia asked, peering over my shoulder. These are the previous residents of the house. My voice trembled. All of them, all crossed out. What does this mean? Alex, this is a list of the souls that the house has taken. She looked ready to faint, and I could feel the panic rising within her. It could be. We need to understand what this means. But at the same time, I knew we were delving into something we might not be able to control. Mia began to back away, her gaze fixed on the door of the room. I have to leave, Alex. I can't stay here any longer. No, wait. I grabbed her arm, but the expression on her face made me let go. Fear was overtaking me, and I didn't want her to feel trapped. I'm going outside, I'll wait for you in the car. And with that, she hurried out of the room, leaving me alone with the objects and the shadows that seemed to move around me. I looked back at the notes in the album, trying to absorb everything. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if the house was breathing around me. The silence was deafening, and I wondered if all those who had been here before me had felt the same. With a sudden need to understand, I closed the album and looked around the room. What else could be here? An old table caught my attention, and I approached it, examining the objects more closely. There was a music box, and when I opened it, a soft melody began to play. It was a children's song, but there was something macabre in the way the notes danced in the air. The music echoed in the empty space, and a shiver ran down my spine. I knew I shouldn't be there, but curiosity was stronger than fear. The melody pulled me closer to the secrets of the house, and as the music played, I couldn't help but think that each note was an invitation to the unknown. Mia was right about the house. It was as if it were alive, waiting for me to make a decision. And whatever I chose could have consequences I couldn't imagine. Yet, even so, I couldn't stop. The music intensified, and the room seemed to tremble around me. It was clear that the house was not just harboring stories, but also secrets that were about to be revealed. And as the melody continued, I knew that whatever was coming could not be avoided. The atmosphere in the Thompson house had become increasingly oppressive. The air felt thicker, carrying an invisible weight that pressed down on my chest. With each passing day, the whispers grew louder, as if they were infiltrating our minds, trying to convince us to succumb to their presence. I could no longer ignore what was happening around us. What had once been a curiosity about the house's history was now becoming a nightmare we couldn't escape. That night, I lay next to Alex, who was immersed in his notes, his eyes glued to his notebook. He was so obsessed with the Thompson family's story that he barely noticed how it was affecting us. I tried to talk to him, but the conversation quickly turned into an argument. "Alex, you need to stop this. This house is harming both of us," I said, my voice trembling with concern. "But Mia, we're so close to discovering the truth." "Don't you feel it?" he replied, not looking at me. "I feel it, but it's not a good thing. These whispers, they're getting louder, clearer. I can't sleep properly." I countered, frustration building with every word. He finally diverted his gaze from the notebook and locked eyes with me. "You're exaggerating. We need to understand what happened here. It's the only way we can stay safe." "Safe? Since when does digging up the past of a haunted house make us feel safe?" "Alex, you're losing yourself in this." I got up, feeling adrenaline surging through my body. The last thing I wanted was to fight, but I couldn't stay silent. He shook his head, looking defeated. "Mia, I just want to understand. I feel like we're connected to this somehow. The whispers, they seem to be calling me. But at what cost?" I insisted, my voice faltering. "Don't you realize this could be dangerous?" He sighed, and for a moment, Alex's gaze seemed distant, as if he were looking through me toward something I couldn't see. "I know you're scared, and so am I. But we need to face this. We can't just run." Hours passed, and before I knew it, it was late at night. I curled up under the blankets, but sleep wouldn't come. The whispers had grown more intense, more insistent, as if they were trying to communicate directly with me. The feeling that something was watching me in the dark was overwhelming. I didn't know if I was dreaming or awake, but fear settled deep in my mind. That night, the nightmares began. I saw the house in flames, its walls burning and crumbling while screams echoed around me. I was paralyzed, unable to move or scream. All I could do was watch the destruction, a scene that seemed to repeat itself. When I finally managed to wake up, my heart was racing, and the darkness of the room felt heavier than ever. "Alex?" I called, my voice sounding small and lost in the emptiness. He was sitting at the table, his eyes fixed on the computer screen, unaware of my presence. I walked over to him, touching his arm. "Are you okay?" He turned, eyes wide. "Mia. You won't believe what I found. I was reviewing the recordings and, it seems like something is trying to manifest." "Alex, I had a horrible nightmare," I said, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "The house was on fire. I can't do this anymore. We need to leave." He frowned, clearly worried, but something in his gaze told me he was more interested in continuing the research than in hearing my fears. "Mia, I know you're scared, but I feel like we're close to something big. We need to find out what this entity wants from us. And what if it wants something we can't give?" I asked, anxiety rising. "What if we can't escape? What if this entity has already taken us?" "Don't think that way," he said, but the uncertainty in his voice didn't go unnoticed. "We need to confront this. We can't let the house win. ###, let's face this together." The idea of confronting the entity made me more anxious, but I knew Alex wouldn't give up. He was determined, even if it meant risking our lives. I just wished he could see what I saw. We weren't merely spectators, we were being drawn into something much bigger than ourselves. Night fell again, and the whispers turned into a deafening roar. I felt as if the house was alive, pulsating with its own energy, as if it was preparing for a confrontation. Alex set up cameras all over the house, determined to capture any manifestation. He looked so focused, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go wrong. "Are you ready?" he asked, looking at me. "I don't know if I'm ready," I replied, my voice trembling. "Let's try. If anything happens, I promise I'll be here to protect you," he said, holding my hand. I wanted to believe his words, but fear still consumed me. With my heart in my throat, we began our recording session. Alex held the camera while I positioned myself beside him. He took a deep breath, and I could see the determination in his eyes. "If there's anyone here, we want you to show yourself. We're ready to hear your story," he said, his voice steady. The moment he spoke, the whispers transformed into deafening screams. The lights began to flicker, and for a moment, everything seemed to spin around us. I looked at Alex, who was so absorbed in recording that he didn't notice the intensity of the situation. "Mia, do you hear this?" he asked, his eyes wide. I was paralyzed, the shadows dancing on the walls, and the feeling that something was about to happen put me on high alert. "Alex, this isn't right. We need to stop." I screamed, but he didn't hear me. The voices became a chaotic chorus, and I felt as if the house was screaming, crying out for something we couldn't understand. Then, amidst the chaos, I saw a figure. A dark silhouette moved down the hallway, and my heart raced. "Alex, there's someone here." I shouted, but he kept filming, as if he were in a trance. "No, it can't be real," he murmured, but I could no longer hear his voice. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, but the feeling that something was watching us lingered. "We need to get out now," I pleaded, pulling him by the arm. He hesitated but finally agreed. As we moved away from the room, the whispers intensified again, as if the house was protesting our exit. "Mia, we have to face this. We can't let it control us," he said, his voice firm, but the fear in his eyes was undeniable. "I don't know if we can face something like this, Alex. I don't know if we're ready," I said, my voice faltering. "These whispers, they aren't just sounds. They're a warning." He looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw doubt in his eyes. "Maybe you're right," he admitted, his determination beginning to waver. "But what if we do nothing? What if we let it take over? That could be even worse." The atmosphere in the house grew increasingly oppressive, and the feeling of being watched only intensified. I knew we needed to do something, but I wasn't sure what. The idea of confronting the presence in the house seemed impossible. "Let's try one more time," Alex suggested, his voice calmer now. "This time, let's do it together. Let's ask the entity to manifest, but carefully." I hesitated, but Alex's concern made me agree. "Okay, but we need to be ready for anything." He nodded, and together we began to repeat the words he had said before, asking the entity to show itself. The environment around us seemed to vibrate, and the tension was palpable. "If there's anyone here, show yourself," Alex exclaimed, his voice echoing through the room. The whispers began to intensify again, and this time I felt a stronger presence. Something was changing in the atmosphere of the house, and I could hardly breathe. I looked at Alex, and he seemed so focused, so determined. Then, at the peak of the tension, the ground beneath our feet began to tremble. The atmosphere in the Thompson house was becoming heavier, as if the air was saturated with a dense and oppressive energy. Mia and I walked down the dark hallway, where the whispers seemed to grow louder with each step. The sense of being watched was undeniable, and the unease in my chest grew like a storm about to break. "Alex, we need to get out of here," Mia said, her trembling voice echoing in the emptiness. She looked pale, and I could see the fear in her eyes, reflecting the shadows of the house. "No, Mia. We're so close to discovering the truth," I replied, trying not to let my own anxiety show. Curiosity consumed me, and I couldn't just give up now. The story of the Thompson family was like a puzzle I was determined to piece together. We need to understand what happened here. She averted her gaze, looking at the walls adorned with old portraits that seemed to follow us with their eyes. Her expression was a mix of worry and despair, and I knew I was about to lose the battle. Alex, don't you see? The house is alive in a strange way. The whispers, the visions, she hesitated, searching for the right words. Don't you think this could be dangerous? Danger is part of discovery. I interrupted, a bit harsher than I intended. If we don't face this, we'll leave the story of the Thompson family in limbo. I won't be just another resident who walks away without knowing the truth. She shook her head as if trying to push away a terrifying thought. And if that truth is something we can't bear? Mia questioned, her voice almost a whisper. We need help. The idea struck me suddenly, like a lightning bolt in the darkness. Let's find someone who understands what's happening here. A specialist in supernatural phenomena. Mia's eyes lit up for a brief moment, but soon worry replaced it. Do you really think that will solve anything? She asked, clearly hesitant. I don't know, but we need to try. I replied, deciding I wouldn't give up. Let's do this. So, after a few hours of online research and phone calls, we found a paranormal expert who was willing to help us. We set up a meeting for the next morning, and the mixture of expectation and fear kept me awake all night, revisiting every recording and every whisper we had captured. The next morning, the expert arrived at the house with a suitcase full of equipment that caught my attention. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and a serious expression, as if he was always searching for something that eluded him. So, you're telling me the house is communicating with you? He asked, looking around, assessing the environment. Exactly. I could hardly contain the nervousness in my voice. We heard whispers, and Mia saw a figure in the hallway. Mia flinched at that, and the expert frowned. This place has a very strong energy. He walked slowly through the room, running his hand along the walls. What you need to understand is that the house is trapped in a cycle of pain and suffering. A cycle? I asked, trying to grasp what he meant. Yes. The story of the Thompson family and what happened here, it's a cycle of pain that needs to be broken. He stopped and looked at us. And you are in danger. A chill ran down my spine, and Mia moved closer to me, seeking comfort. But how can we break this cycle? Mia asked, her voice trembling. The only way is to confront the entity that is tied to this house. The expert's expression became grave. But I must warn you, this can have terrible consequences. Consequences? I asked, adrenaline beginning to pulse through my veins. The entity doesn't want to be confronted. It feeds on fear and pain. If you're not prepared, you might end up attracting its attention. He paused, and I could feel the weight of his words. Mia looked at me, her concern evident. Alex, this doesn't sound safe. The unease in her voice was palpable. Can't we just leave it all behind? No, Mia. I didn't want to be harsh, but the idea of giving up frustrated me. We need to find out what happened here. We're already so involved. The expert sighed, sensing the tension between us. The decision to continue is yours. But if you choose to move forward, we'll need a plan. It won't be easy, and you must be ready for what may happen. ####. He began to explain some protection techniques and how to deal with spiritual manifestations. As he spoke, I felt the atmosphere around us becoming increasingly charged, as if the house itself were listening and reacting to our words. Remember that the entity may try to manipulate your fears and insecurities. He said, looking seriously at us. Stay calm and, above all, trust each other. Mia nodded, but I could see that uncertainty still lingered in her gaze. What if the entity really manifests? She asked, her voice barely audible. If that happens, you must remember that you are not alone. I will be here to help, and we will face this together." The expert seemed more confident than we were, and I admired his determination. After a few hours of preparation and explanations, we decided it was time to confront the entity. The expert led us to the room where we had heard the loudest whispers. The atmosphere was heavy, and the tension was almost palpable. "Now, let's prepare." He began setting up the equipment, connecting cameras and recording devices. "When the entity manifests, stay strong and don't lose your connection with each other." Mia held my hand, and I could feel her heart racing. "I'm with you, Alex," she said, her voice firm despite the fear evident in her eyes. "We're in this together," I replied, trying to convey reassurance. Once everything was ready, the expert started to invoke the entity, calling it to manifest. The air around us seemed to grow colder, and the whispers began to intensify again, like a rising wave of energy. "Come!" he shouted, his voice echoing in the room. "Show yourself." Then, the whispers turned into deafening screams, and the house seemed to tremble beneath our feet. The intensity of the energy was almost unbearable, and I looked at Mia, whose eyes were wide with terror. "Alex!" she screamed, her voice nearly swallowed by the chaos around us. The expert tried to maintain control, but the house was spiraling out of control. Fear began to seep into me, and I realized the situation was becoming much more severe than we had imagined. The entity was feeding off our fear, and I knew we would need all our strength to face it. But deep down, doubt began to creep in. Were we really ready to confront what lay hidden behind the walls of the Thompson house? The storm was approaching, the distant sound of thunder echoing like a grim warning. Inside the Thompson house, the atmosphere was charged, as if the structure itself were breathing anxiously. Mia and I looked out the window, watching dark clouds gather in the sky. A sense of foreboding enveloped me, as if the house were preparing for something terrible. "It's getting stormier outside," I said, trying to hide the nervousness in my voice. "What do you think will happen?" Mia stepped away from the window, her anxious look making me even more worried. "I don't know, Alex. I feel like the house is different. It's as if it's alive." "Let's get ready for the confrontation," I suggested, trying to sound confident. "If the entity really exists, we need to be prepared. The cameras will help us capture any manifestation." She nodded, but I could see the hesitation in her gaze. It was as if she wanted to believe that this was all just a big lie, an illusion created by our minds. But the truth was that the whispers were louder and the visions more disturbing. Each passing day, the house seemed to trap us more. We started setting up the cameras throughout the house, positioning them in the corners of the rooms where strange phenomena had occurred before. I recalled each whisper, every unexplained movement of objects, and couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. "Alex, are you sure this is a good idea?" Mia asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What if the entity turns against us? We need to know the truth." I replied, forcing a smile. "If we don't do this, we'll always live in fear. We can't let the unknown control our lives." "All right," she said, but I noticed that worry still consumed her. "Just be careful." As we continued to work, the storm began to roar outside. The wind howled with such intensity that it seemed to want to enter the house, and the windows rattled with each gust. The light started to flicker intermittently, and I felt a tightness in my chest. It was as if the house were preparing for a climax, a moment when everything would come together. With every camera we installed, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. I could feel the tension in the air, as if the walls were watching our every move. The voices that had once been whispers were now a distant chorus, a murmur that seemed to intensify as the storm approached. "Alex, are you hearing this?" Mia asked, her eyes wide as she looked at the ceiling, as if expecting something to descend from it. "They're getting louder." "Yes, I hear it," I replied, trying to remain calm. "But we need to continue. We're almost there." Finally, the last camera was installed, and we sat on the living room floor, surrounded by a pile of equipment and the palpable tension of the house. The storm outside seemed to have intensified, the thunder cracking as if it wanted to join our struggle. "I don't know if I can do this, Alex," Mia said, her voice trembling. "What if we're caught off guard? What if the entity doesn't want to be confronted? The only way to face it is to seek answers," I said, trying to be encouraging. "We need to know what's happening here, Mia. We need to understand who we are and what the house wants from us." Mia sighed, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Do you really believe we can confront this? That we can understand what's happening?" "I believe we have to try," I replied. "We can't live with this fear. We need to fight against it together." She hesitated, but eventually nodded, albeit reluctantly. It was clear that the idea of confronting the entity terrified her, but I felt the weight of this choice too. It wasn't just about us, it was about the house, the history it concealed, and the cycle of pain that seemed to envelop us. With the cameras positioned, we decided it was time to prepare mentally. I felt it was the moment to invoke the presence, to call it out from the shadows. I picked up the camera and held it firmly, my heart racing in my chest. "Here we are," I began, my voice steady. "If you are here, manifest yourself. We are ready to hear what you have to say." A deep silence engulfed the room. The only sound was the storm outside, which seemed to grow in intensity. The lights began to flicker once more, and I felt a wave of cold wash over my body. It was as if something was approaching. "Alex," Mia whispered, her eyes fixed on the door of the room. "Don't you think this is dangerous? We need to know," I insisted. "If we don't do this now, we'll never know." Then the whispers began to intensify, like a distant echo reverberating through the walls. It was an almost hypnotic sound, and I found myself lost in its cadence. The words were indistinct, but there was urgency in them, a need to be heard. "What do you want from us?" I asked, my voice rising now. "Why are you calling us?" In the next instant, the lights began to flicker wildly, and a surge of energy coursed through the room. The whispers transformed into deafening screams, as if the house were revolting against our presence. I could barely hear my own voice. "Alex!" Mia screamed, gripping my arm tightly. "What's happening?" "I don't know," I replied, trying to stay focused. "Keep recording. We need to capture this." But the intensity of the storm and the screams seemed to create a barrier between us and reality. The walls trembled, and the house felt alive, pulsing with an energy I had never experienced before. The air grew heavier, and the pressure increased, as if something was about to snap. Then, an object on the shelf moved by itself. A book fell to the floor, and I could see the cover opening to reveal yellowed, worn pages. The movement was so abrupt that I could barely process it. What else could happen? "Alex, we need to get out of here," Mia exclaimed, her voice elevated, almost suffocated by the tumult. "This isn't right." But I couldn't move. An invisible force seemed to hold me there, and I was determined to uncover the truth. Hashtag. The screams grew louder, and the house seemed to tremble under the pressure. "If you're here, show yourself," I shouted, but the response was a deafening echo, as if the house itself was revolting against our presence. Suddenly, everything fell silent. The silence was so deep that I could hear my own heartbeat. The light stabilized, and the storm outside seemed to have calmed. But the feeling that something was about to happen was palpable. Mia looked at me, her eyes wide. "What's happening? Why did it stop?" "I don't know," I replied, my voice low. "But I feel like something is about to be revealed." And indeed, something began to move in the shadows. A dark shape took form in the corner of the room, and I could feel fear consuming Mia. The figure seemed to float, its contours indistinct and shadowy. I felt the presence stronger than ever, as if it were a specter from the past. "Alex," Mia whispered, gripping my arm tightly. "I don't like this. We need to go." But before I could respond, the figure approached. It was as if a wave of energy enveloped us, and I couldn't move. The air grew cold, and the house began to vibrate again, as if it were preparing for a scream. I didn't know what to do. The only thing I knew was that we were at the center of something much bigger than us, a cycle of pain and suffering that seemed intent on swallowing us. And in that moment, I realized that the battle we were about to face could change our lives forever. Desperate, I felt my heart race as I rifled through the diary of the Thompson family's daughter. With each page I turned, a mix of fear and hope washed over me. What more could I find there? What could I do to save Mia? The house was full of secrets, and I knew I needed to uncover them before it was too late. Whispers echoed in my mind, and I couldn't ignore them any longer. They were insistent, as if calling me, guiding me towards something I didn't fully understand. "Alex, are you okay?" Mia's voice echoed in my mind. I hadn't realized how absorbed I was in the reading. I lifted my eyes and saw Mia leaning against the door, a worried expression on her face. I'm trying to understand what happened to them," I responded, trying to maintain my composure, even though my insides were in turmoil. "Look at this." I showed her a passage, my hand trembling slightly. "It says the pact is about the exchange of souls. What does that mean?" Mia stepped closer, her eyes scanning the text. "Exchange of souls. That doesn't sound good, Alex. What does it mean? Were they trying to trade something?" "Maybe," I murmured, getting lost in the words. "Maybe the entity needs a life to feed on or to sustain itself. And now, it seems like it's trying to complete the cycle with you." The weight of those words hung heavy in the air between us. The sound of the storm outside felt like an echo of the tempest inside me. But how could this happen? Mia asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Do you really believe this could be happening to us?" I didn't know how to answer, but logic and reason were slipping away. "Mia, I don't know. But we need to find out. If the entity is connected to you, maybe I can do something. A ritual, perhaps." A heavy silence settled between us. I could see hesitation in her eyes. "And if that's dangerous, Alex? What if you get hurt? I can't lose you too." Her concern was palpable, cutting through me like a knife. "I won't let that happen," I asserted, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I promise I'll find a way to save you. I won't let this house win. Not after everything we've been through." Mia took a deep breath, but uncertainty was still etched on her face. "And if what we find here is the key to freeing us? What will you do?" "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll follow the instructions I found in the diary. If there's a chance to break this cycle, I need to try." Determination grew within me, but so did the fear of the unknown. What if the ritual didn't work? What if I became the next victim? "Be careful, Alex. Don't forget what the expert said. This could have terrible consequences," she warned, her voice trembling. "I know, but I'd rather take the risk than stay here and wait for the entity to do whatever it wants with you. I can't allow that." I gazed deeply into her eyes, wishing she could understand the urgency of my plan. "We need to start now. The diary mentioned some items we'll need for the ritual. Let's find them before it's too late." Mia nodded slowly, though I could sense her internal struggle. "All right, let's do this. But, promise me you'll be careful, Alex. I don't want to lose you." "I promise," I said, even though the uncertainty of our fate loomed over us like a dark cloud. We began searching for the items the diary mentioned. The first item was a black candle, which was supposed to symbolize the absorption of negative energies. I remembered seeing some candles in the kitchen and quickly headed there. As I searched, I heard Mia murmuring behind me. "A pact, a trade, what does that mean?" she reflected, her voice distant and filled with apprehension. Maybe the entity needs something from us, I suggested, opening a drawer. Maybe it requires a sacrifice. My heart sank at the thought. A sacrifice? Alex, this is too serious. We can't think like that. She was visibly shaken. I know, but we need to be rational. We have to consider all possibilities. What else could break this cycle? I finally found the candle. Its simple shape seemed to absorb the light around us. And if the entity is trying to separate us? Mia said, her voice now filled with panic. What if this is all part of a plan to make us lose each other? No, we can't think like that, I replied, trying to keep her hope alive. We need to focus on what's in front of us. We must find the other items and perform the ritual. This might be our only chance. She agreed, but I could feel the tension between us growing. With each passing second, the sense of urgency intensified. The next item we needed was a photo of the Thompson family, something that represented their connection to the house. Let's see if we can find something in their room, I suggested, my heart racing. Maybe we'll have better luck there. As we entered the room, a wave of cold enveloped us, as if the house itself was breathing. The atmosphere was charged, and the daylight streaming through the window seemed dimmer. I began searching around, while Mia approached a dusty shelf full of objects. Look at this. She held up a small wooden box, her hands trembling. It seems like there's something inside. Open it. What's in there? I said, my anxiety growing. She carefully opened the box, and inside were a series of black and white photos showing the Thompson family in happy moments. But something about their expressions seemed off, as if a shadow hung over them even in their best days. These photos, they're strange, Mia commented, examining one of the images. Look at their eyes. It's as if they knew something was about to happen. We need to take this, I said, grabbing the photo. It could be crucial for the ritual. With the photo in hand and the candle, we pressed on. The next item in the diary was a pinch of salt, symbolizing purification. I remembered there was salt in the kitchen, so I ran back there, with Mia following me. It felt like we were racing against time, aware that with every step we took, we were getting both closer and farther away at the same time. As I grabbed the salt, a wave of whispers intensified. They were louder now, as if trying to communicate. Alex, a voice whispered, sending a shiver down my spine. Alex, I'm with you, did you hear that? I asked, looking at Mia, who was pale. She nodded slowly, fear reflected in her eyes. Yes, it feels like the house is alive, and not in a good way. We need to go, I said, putting the salt in a small container. Now we have everything we need. Let's perform the ritual. The tension mounted with every step we took back to our space upstairs. A sense of claustrophobia began to envelop me. I felt like the house was closing in on us, the walls squeezing tighter, as if they didn't want us to leave. Alex. I'm scared, Mia confessed, her voice barely audible. I'm scared too, I admitted, looking at her. But we have to be strong. ###, we need to do this together. And we will support each other. I won't leave you alone. And what if it doesn't work, she asked, her vulnerability breaking my heart. If it doesn't work, at least we know we did everything we could. And I will fight for you, no matter what happens, I assured her, trying to convey courage. Finally, we reached what seemed to be the center of the house, a space where the walls vibrated with a dense, heavy energy. We placed the items on the floor and, with a determined look, began to arrange everything for the ritual. The atmosphere was charged, and I could feel the presence of the entity approaching. Whatever it was watching us, waiting. And I knew that the fight wouldn't be easy. But I was ready to face whatever came for Mia. The ritual was about to begin. The house was enveloped in a sepulchral silence, but I felt the tension in the air, as if all the energy of the house was concentrated in a single point. With the candles arranged in a circle around me, I prepared to summon the entity that had taken hold of Mia. What I didn't know was that this summoning would change everything I knew about both of us. "I'm ready," I murmured to myself, repeating the words that had echoed in my mind since I found the diary. The smell of melted wax and the dampness of the old house surrounded me as I looked at the photo of Mia placed in front of me. It was a reminder of the joy we had shared, and I knew I had to fight with all my strength to bring her back. "Entity that resides in this house, I summon you." My voice sounded firm, but inside me, a wave of uncertainty and fear rose. "Come to the light, show yourself." The darkness around me seemed to stir, as if the house were alive and reacting to my words. The air grew cold, and a strange breeze swept through the room, extinguishing some of the candles. The flickering light illuminated only my determination. And then, the manifestation began. A shadow began to form in the center of the circle. It was an indistinct figure, but as it drew closer, I could see it had the outline of Mia. My heart raced as I recognized her, but something was wrong. Her features were distorted, as if her essence were trapped between two worlds. "Mia?" I called, my voice choked. "Is that you? Are you here?" The figure hesitated, and a wave of pain and confusion crossed her face. It was as if she were struggling to break free from something that held her captive. "Alex," the voice that came from her was not the same. It was an echo, a blend of her voice with a dark tone that resonated in the house. "You shouldn't be here. You don't understand what is happening. I know you're trapped, and I will free you." I shouted, trying to keep my focus. "I won't leave you here. I won't allow this entity to take you." The shadow began to writhe, as if in agony. "You cannot save what has already been lost," the entity responded, and I realized there was something more. It wasn't just a creation of the house, it was part of Mia's very essence, which had been corrupted. "You don't know what it means to be part of us. To be part of the cycle." "Cycle? What cycle?" I asked, trying to understand. "What do you want from us?" Mia's figure began to fade away, and I realized I had to act quickly. "Exchange of souls," she replied, the pain in her voice echoing in the room. "The house feeds on pain and suffering. You cannot break the cycle if you don't do what's necessary." What she said made my stomach churn. A part of me wanted to believe I could save her without consequences, but another part knew that the only way to truly free her was to confront the entity and the evil cycle. "But I can't sacrifice you," I said, feeling despair consume me. "I can't lose you again. I can't." Tears streamed down my face, and Mia's figure seemed to hesitate, as if she were battling an inner force. "Alex, listen." Her voice grew stronger. "You need to understand. The only way to break this is to sacrifice yourself. It's the only way to free not just me, but everyone who came before us." The desperation in her voice hit me like a blow. "No. I can't do that. I can't leave you here, and I can't sacrifice myself." I was torn, the thought of losing Mia again terrified me. The house began to shake, as if it knew the final moment was approaching. "Alex, you have to trust me," she pleaded, and I saw a spark of hope in her eyes, even as the entity dominated her. "Please, do this. Break the cycle. Free us." The walls began to warp, and the sound of whispers grew louder, almost deafening. It was as if the house itself were screaming for resolution. I knew time was running out. If I didn't act now, I could lose Mia forever. "How do I do it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do I need to do?" Mia's figure began to dissipate further, and I realized I was losing the connection. I had to decide quickly. "Sacrifice yourself, Alex. Only then can you break this cycle. The light will come. You will find peace, and I will be able to be free. Do this for us." Her voice was filled with a penetrating sincerity that I couldn't ignore. The weight of that decision crushed me, but the image of her being consumed by darkness made me realize that the only way to save her was through this act. I don't know if I'm strong enough, I murmured, feeling doubt erode my courage. I don't want to leave you. You are stronger than you think, she replied, and for a moment, the shadow seemed to calm. You always have been. Now, go. Do what needs to be done. I took a deep breath, feeling the pain and sadness flooding my being. I looked at her photo, then at the distorted figure that represented her essence. I love you, Mia, I said, my voice coming out as a whisper full of pain. I will always love you. The house began to tremble more violently, and I knew there was no more time. Holding Mia's photo in one hand and the diary in the other, I closed my eyes and prepared for the final act. I accept, I declared firmly. I accept the sacrifice. May the light come and may the darkness fade away. And in that moment, a wave of energy enveloped my body. The ground beneath me started to open, and an intense light began to emanate from the center of the room. I felt the presence of the entity approaching, but something inside me was at peace. I was ready to be freed from all the pains and fears that tormented me. Alex, no. Mia's voice echoed, now clear and strong. You don't have to do this. But I could feel it was too late. The light intensified, and I realized I was being pulled into it. The enveloping warmth bathed my body, and I finally understood what was necessary. I do this for you, for us. I shouted as the glow surrounded me. The house began to crumble around us, and the whispers transformed into screams of despair. But amid all this, a sense of relief washed over me. A radiant light filled the space, and I saw Mia's figure close to me, now free of distortion. The light expanded, and I felt a familiar warmth. Thank you, Alex, she whispered, her voice now full of love and gratitude. You broke the cycle. You saved me. And as the darkness dissipated, the house began to crumble around us, but I knew there was nothing left to fear. I will always be with you, I replied, feeling her presence mingle with the light. I knew that even though I was making the ultimate sacrifice, the love we shared would never disappear. And as everything around us collapsed, a wave of peace enveloped me, as if we were finally free. The house fell apart into pieces, but in that last moment, I realized I wasn't alone. Mia was with me, and together, we found the freedom we had longed for. The light shone brightly, and everything faded to black. The pain was finally gone, and the Thompson house became just a distant echo, a whisper in eternity.